At 18, the young black seamstress stood before the weathered sheriff clutching marriage papers while his 4 wild children glared from behind dusty windows. The townspeople whispered cruel predictions. She was too young, too different, destined to fail at taming the lawman's unruly household. They saw her future written in disappointment and shame. But the stoic sheriff needed help desperately. His children had been running wild since their mother's mysterious death 6 months prior, and the town council threatened his badge if he couldn't restore order to his fractured family. What neither the bride nor groom knew was that the woman who died hadn't succumbed to illness. She'd been murdered by someone still walking free, someone who now watched this new arrangement with growing alarm. Would this marriage of convenience survive long enough to uncover the deadly truth lurking in their midst? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The needle slipped through Lorena Pierce's finger as cruel laughter echoed from the front of Mrs. Henderson's dress shop. At 18, she had grown accustomed to the whispers that followed her through Willowbrook's dusty streets. The women of the town made no effort to hide their opinions about her prospects. "That girl will be lucky to find any man willing to take her on." Mrs. Patterson's voice carried clearly to the back room where Lorena mended torn sleeves and hemmed skirts. "Too young and inexperienced for any decent family," another woman agreed. "Mark my words, she'll end up with nothing." Lorena pressed the fabric tighter and continued her work. She had heard worse. The small Kansas town of 1887 offered few opportunities for someone in her position. The sewing room had become her refuge, a place where she could prove her worth through the precision of her stitches and the quality of her repairs. Outside, chaos erupted in the street. Sheriff Owen Ralston's 4 children had struck again. Tommy, the 15-year-old, had knocked over Mrs. Gibson's vegetable cart while chasing his 8-year-old twin siblings, Jacob and Josie, who had apparently stolen apples from the general store. 12-year-old Sarah stood apart from the commotion, her face blank and distant. The sheriff arrived moments later, his weathered face showing the strain of recent months. Owen Ralston commanded respect as a lawman, but his personal life had crumbled since his wife Margaret's death 6 months prior. The children's behavior had grown increasingly wild, testing every boundary and creating problems throughout the town. "This cannot continue, Sheriff," Mayor Collins declared, approaching with several town council members. "Your children are disrupting our community daily. The council has discussed this matter extensively." Owen's jaw tightened as he helped Mrs. Gibson collect her scattered vegetables. "I understand your concerns." "Do you? Because yesterday your twins released Mrs. Parker's chickens, and last week your eldest son was fighting behind the saloon. The townspeople are losing patience." The mayor's words carried an unspoken threat. Owen's position as sheriff depended on community support, and that support was rapidly eroding. Single fathers with uncontrollable children did not inspire confidence in a town that valued order and respectability. "Handle your domestic situation, or the council will be forced to reconsider your employment," Mayor Collins stated flatly before walking away. Lorena watched the scene unfold from the shop window. She recognized the desperation in Owen's eyes, the same look she had seen in her own mirror countless mornings. Both of them were fighting battles they seemed destined to lose. That evening, Owen appeared at the dress shop just as Lorena prepared to lock up. His hat rested awkwardly in his hands, and his usual confident demeanor had given way to something more vulnerable. "Miss Pierce, I have a proposition that might benefit us both." Lorena set down her sewing basket and waited. "You need security and respectability. I need help with my children. A marriage arrangement could solve both our problems." The words hung in the air between them. Marriage proposals in Willowbrook usually involved courtship, flowers, and romantic declarations. This felt more like a business transaction, which perhaps made it more honest than most. "The children need a mother figure, and I need someone I can trust to manage the household when my duties take me away," Owen continued. "You would have a home, a family, and standing in the community." Lorena studied his face. Owen Ralston was not offering love or passion, but he was offering something potentially more valuable, a chance at a different life. The alternative was remaining in the back room of the dress shop, listening to women discuss her lack of prospects until she became too old for even that kindness. "I accept," she said simply. The wedding took place 3 days later at the courthouse. No flowers, no celebration, just the practical joining of two people seeking solutions to their respective problems. The town buzzed with shock and speculation. Mrs. Henderson closed the dress shop early so she could spread the news more efficiently. Lorena's first glimpse of her new home came with 4 hostile faces peering through windows. The Ralston house sat on the respectable side of town, white-painted and well-maintained, but the children's expressions promised that appearances could be deceiving. Tommy met them at the door with undisguised resentment. "We don't need anyone trying to replace our mother." Sarah disappeared upstairs without a word. The twins regarded Lorena with the calculating stares of 8-year-olds planning mischief. Owen cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'll show you to your room. The children's bedtime is 8 o'clock, though they rarely observe it." The master bedroom had been divided with a curtain, providing Lorena with her own space while maintaining propriety. Margaret's belongings still occupied the dresser and wardrobe, creating an uncomfortable reminder of the woman she was meant to replace. "I'm often called away on sheriff business," Owen explained. "Sometimes for days at a time. The children will be your responsibility during those periods." Over the following days, Lorena discovered the true scope of her challenge. The children had developed an impressive array of tactics to drive away potential maternal figures. Her carefully prepared meals were rejected in favor of bread and butter. Her attempts at establishing bedtimes resulted in hours of chaos. Her efforts to engage them in conversation met with stubborn silence or outright hostility. The twins proved particularly creative in their rebellion. They short-sheeted her bed, hid dead mice in her sewing basket, and somehow managed to dye her white apron a disturbing shade of green. Tommy's resistance took the form of deliberate defiance, openly questioning her authority and encouraging his siblings to ignore her instructions. Sarah's rejection felt more painful because it was silent. The girl simply acted as if Lorena did not exist, looking through her rather than at her, never responding to questions or requests. The town watched this domestic drama with barely concealed satisfaction. The whispers had evolved from predictions of failure to confirmations of it. Women nodded knowingly when they saw Lorena struggling with the children at church or in the market. "I told you she was too inexperienced," Mrs. Patterson declared to anyone willing to listen. "Those children need a firm hand, not some young girl playing house." Lorena began to wonder if they were right. Each failed attempt at connection, each rejected meal, each night of chaos made the task seem more impossible. Owen remained polite but distant, treating her more like a hired housekeeper than a wife. The marriage felt exactly like what it was, a business arrangement that was failing to produce the desired results. But failure meant returning to the dress shop, admitting defeat, and confirming every cruel prediction the town had made about her future. That possibility drove her to continue trying, even as the children's resistance showed no signs of weakening. What she could not know was that her real test lay hidden in the attic, waiting in a trunk that would reveal the true danger facing the Ralston family. 3 weeks into her marriage, Lorena climbed the narrow stairs to the attic with determination born of desperation. The children's latest prank had involved molasses in her shoes, and she needed space away from their watchful, hostile eyes. The attic offered the perfect refuge for organizing the household and perhaps finding clues about how Margaret had managed the family. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light, filtering through a small window. Boxes and trunks filled the cramped space, each one holding memories of a life cut short. Lorena moved carefully among the stored belongings, searching for anything that might help her understand the children she was failing to reach. A heavy trunk sat tucked beneath the eaves, partially hidden by old quilts. Unlike the other storage containers, this one bore a small padlock. The key hung nearby on a nail, as if Margaret had hidden it but kept it accessible. Lorena's grandmother had taught her to pay attention to things that seemed deliberately concealed. People hid what mattered most. The trunk opened with a soft creak. Inside, beneath layers of tissue paper, lay Margaret's most personal possessions: a silver brush and mirror set, dried flowers pressed between pages of poetry, letters tied with ribbon, and at the bottom, a leather-bound journal secured with a thin cord. Lorena lifted the journal with careful hands. The leather felt soft and worn, as if it had been handled frequently. Margaret's neat handwriting filled page after page, documenting the daily life of the Ralston household. The early entries spoke of happiness, children's milestones, and love for her husband. But as Lorena read deeper, the tone shifted. Margaret began describing strange symptoms, headaches that came without warning, nausea that struck at odd times, a metallic taste that lingered in her mouth after meals. She wrote about feeling dizzy during church services and experiencing stomach pains that kept her awake at night. The entries grew more troubling. Margaret described suspicious moments that made little sense individually, but formed a disturbing pattern when read together. Food that tasted wrong, medicine that seemed to make her sicker rather than better, visitors who asked too many questions about family finances and the children's future. Lorena's grandmother had been a midwife and healer, forced to develop skills in reading both illness and human nature. She had taught Lorena to recognize the signs when something was not what it appeared to be. People revealed their true intentions through small actions, inconsistencies in their stories, and nervous habits that betrayed guilty knowledge. The final journal entry made Lorena's blood run cold. Margaret's handwriting had become shaky, desperate. She wrote about being certain someone was slowly poisoning her, but being unable to identify who. The symptoms she described matched arsenic poisoning, something Lorena recognized from her grandmother's warnings about rat poison and its effects on the human body. Margaret's last written words were a plea for someone to protect her children if her suspicions proved correct. She had died 3 days after writing those lines. Lorena closed the journal with trembling hands. The woman whose place she had taken had been murdered, and the killer remained free. Worse, the murderer might still pose a threat to the children she was struggling to protect. A sound on the stairs made her quickly return the journal to its hiding place. Tommy's voice carried up from below, sharp with suspicion. "What are you doing up there?" "Cleaning and organizing," Lorena called back, her voice steadier than she felt. "The attic needs attention." She climbed down to find all 4 children waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Their expressions held a mixture of curiosity and wariness that had become familiar. But now Lorena saw something else in their faces. Fear. They were not just grieving and angry. They were afraid of losing another mother figure, afraid of trusting someone who might disappear as suddenly as Margaret had. That evening, as Owen reviewed reports at the kitchen table, Lorena watched him carefully. Her grandmother had taught her to observe without being obvious, to notice the small details that revealed character. Owen's grief appeared genuine, but Margaret's journal had mentioned that the killer was someone close to the family, someone with access to their home and daily routines. Dr. Whitman arrived the next morning to check on Sarah, who had been fighting a persistent cough. Lorena observed him closely as he examined the girl. His hands shook slightly as he prepared his medicines, and he asked several questions about the family's eating habits that seemed unrelated to Sarah's respiratory symptoms. "Mrs. Ralston seems to be taking good care of the children," he commented to Owen. "I hope she's not experiencing any of the digestive troubles that plagued poor Margaret." The comment struck Lorena as odd. Why would he assume she might develop the same symptoms? Unless he knew what had caused Margaret's illness in the first place. Deputy Miller stopped by later that afternoon, ostensibly to discuss patrol schedules with Owen. But Lorena noticed how his eyes lingered on Margaret's remaining belongings, and how he seemed nervous when discussing the period around her death. He had been Owen's second-in-command for years, with access to the house and knowledge of the family's routines. Mrs. Colbert, their wealthy neighbor, paid a social call that felt more like an interrogation. She asked pointed questions about the children's inheritance, Margaret's family connections, and Owen's plans for the future. Her interest in the family's financial affairs seemed excessive for a casual neighbor. 3 potential suspects, each with opportunity and possible motive. Lorena began making mental notes about their behavior, their access to the household, and their reactions when Margaret's name was mentioned. That night, Sarah's cough worsened dramatically. She developed a high fever and began struggling to breathe. Dr. Whitman declared the situation hopeless, shaking his head gravely as he packed his medical bag. "I've seen this before," he told Owen quietly. "Sometimes children follow their mothers too quickly. Perhaps it's for the best." His words chilled Lorena. This was her chance to prove herself, not just to the children, but to herself. Her grandmother had taught her remedies that doctors often dismissed, but that had saved lives when conventional medicine failed. Lorena sent Owen to fetch willow bark and honey from the general store. She brewed teas from herbs her grandmother had shown her, created poultices to ease Sarah's breathing, and spent the night cooling the girl's fever with damp cloths. She told Sarah stories her grandmother had shared, spoke of strength and healing, and refused to let the child give up. By dawn, Sarah's fever had broken. Her breathing eased, and color returned to her pale cheeks. The girl opened her eyes and looked directly at Lorena for the first time since the marriage. "You stayed with me," Sarah whispered. "I will always stay with you," Lorena promised. Tommy appeared in the doorway, his usual hostility replaced by something resembling respect. "You saved her life." "The doctor said she would die." Word of Sarah's recovery spread through the town quickly. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered about strange healing practices. But the children began to see Lorena differently. She had proven herself when it mattered most. Yet even as the family dynamics started to shift, Lorena could not forget what she had learned in the attic. Somewhere in Willowbrook, a killer walked free, and the Ralston family remained in danger. Sarah's recovery marked a turning point in the Ralston household. The 12-year-old began following Lorena around the house, asking quiet questions about cooking and sewing. Tommy stopped actively undermining her authority. Though he remained distant, the twins tested fewer boundaries, sensing the shift in family dynamics. Owen noticed the changes immediately. He found himself watching Lorena as she moved through their home with growing confidence. The way she handled Sarah's illness had impressed him more than he cared to admit. This young woman possessed strength and wisdom that belied her 18 years. "You have a gift with the children," he told her one evening as they cleaned dishes together. "They just needed someone to prove they were worth fighting for," Lorena replied. The simple honesty of her words stirred something in Owen's chest. His marriage of convenience was beginning to feel like something more substantial, though he was not yet ready to examine those feelings closely. 2 weeks after Sarah's recovery, urgent news arrived that changed everything. The Draven gang had robbed a bank in the neighboring county and was heading toward Willowbrook. Sheriff Ralston would need to join the posse pursuing them, a dangerous mission that could last several days. Owen sat the children down before dawn on the day of departure. "Lorena will be in charge while I'm gone. You will obey her as you would obey me." Tommy nodded solemnly. The twins promised to be good. Sarah gripped Lorena's hand tightly. The family that had rejected her just weeks earlier now looked to her for protection and guidance. "Be careful," Lorena told Owen as he prepared to leave. "Your children need their father. They need their mother too," Owen replied, the words carrying more weight than either of them expected. The first day passed peacefully. Lorena established routines that gave the children structure while allowing them some freedom. She taught Sarah to bake bread, helped Tommy with his reading, and channeled the twins' energy into useful tasks around the house. The normal rhythm of family life felt both foreign and wonderful. On the second day, strangers arrived. 2 well-dressed men appeared at the door claiming to be associates of Margaret's family from back east. They asked detailed questions about the children's health, their education, and the family's financial situation. Their interest felt intrusive and calculated. "Margaret's relatives are concerned about the children's welfare," the taller man explained, "living with such a young stepmother in a dangerous profession like law enforcement." Lorena's grandmother had taught her to trust her instincts about people. These men made her skin crawl. Their questions seemed designed to gather information rather than express genuine concern. She gave vague answers and sent them away as quickly as politeness allowed. That evening, she noticed someone watching the house from across the street. The figure disappeared when she looked directly, but the feeling of being observed persisted. Margaret's journal had mentioned her growing certainty that someone was monitoring the family. Now Lorena understood that paranoid feeling. The realization struck her like a physical blow. The murderer was still out there, and her investigation into Margaret's death might have attracted unwanted attention. If someone had killed once to protect their secrets, they would not hesitate to kill again. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the house, every shadow moving past the windows, every unexpected sound made her heart race. The children were depending on her for protection, but she was barely 18 and had no experience dealing with killers or conspiracies. By the third morning, fear had transformed into determination. Her grandmother had survived worse dangers through courage and quick thinking. Lorena would do the same. She made a decision that would have shocked the timid seamstress she had been just months earlier. If danger was coming to them, she would take the children somewhere safe until Owen returned. Her grandmother's abandoned cabin in the hills outside town offered the perfect refuge. "We're going on an adventure," she told the children, packing essential supplies into baskets and saddlebags. Tommy questioned the sudden departure, but Lorena's serious expression convinced him not to argue. The twins treated it like an exciting game. Sarah stayed close to Lorena's side, sensing the underlying tension without understanding its source. The ride to the cabin took most of the afternoon. Lorena pushed the pace, constantly checking behind them for signs of pursuit. Her grandmother's cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by thick woods, defensible and hidden from casual view. As they settled in for the night, the children's excitement at the unusual outing gave way to curiosity about their stepmother's past. Around the flickering campfire, barriers began crumbling in ways that weeks of living under the same roof had not accomplished. "Tell us about your grandmother," Sarah requested, snuggling closer to Lorena's side. Lorena spoke of a woman who had raised her after her parents died, who had taught her to heal the sick and read the truth in people's faces. She described a childhood filled with challenges that had seemed insurmountable at the time, but had built the strength she needed now. "Were you scared when your parents died?" Tommy asked quietly. "Terrified," Lorena admitted. "But my grandmother taught me that being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you careful. And being careful keeps you alive." The twins had fallen asleep against her shoulders. Sarah dozed fitfully, occasionally murmuring in her sleep. Tommy sat staring into the fire, processing everything he had heard. "I can't read very well," he finally confessed. "The letters get mixed up, and I feel stupid." "Intelligence has nothing to do with reading difficulties," Lorena assured him. "My grandmother couldn't read at all, but she was the smartest person I ever knew. We'll work together when we get home." "Home," Tommy repeated, as if testing the word. "Is that what it is now? Home? If you want it to be." For the first time since their marriage, Tommy smiled at her genuinely. "I think I do." The next morning brought the sound of approaching horses. Lorena tensed, positioning herself between the children and the tree line. But the riders were Owen and his deputies returning from their successful pursuit of the Draven gang. Owen's relief at finding his family safe was evident, but his confusion about their location required explanation. Lorena told him about the suspicious visitors and her concerns about the family's safety. She did not mention Margaret's journal, not yet ready to voice her suspicions about murder. "You did the right thing," Owen assured her. "Keeping them safe was more important than following conventions." The ride home felt different than their panicked flight to the cabin. The children chattered excitedly about their adventure, no longer viewing Lorena as an intruder in their family, but as its protector. Owen rode beside her, stealing glances that spoke of growing admiration and something deeper. That night, as they tucked the children into their own beds, Sarah hugged Lorena tightly. "I'm glad Papa married you," she whispered. Tommy shook Owen's hand formally, then surprised everyone by hugging Lorena as well. "Thank you for taking care of us." Even the twins seemed genuinely happy to be home with their unconventional but increasingly solid family unit. As Owen and Lorena stood together in the kitchen after the children were asleep, the distance between them felt different. The marriage of convenience had evolved into something neither had expected, but both were beginning to treasure. "The children love you," Owen observed. "I love them too," Lorena replied, realizing the truth of those words as she spoke them. "And their father?" Owen asked quietly. Before Lorena could answer, a knock at the door interrupted the moment. Owen opened it to reveal an elegantly dressed woman flanked by two men in expensive suits. "I am Adeline Beauregard," the woman announced imperiously, "Margaret's sister. I have come for my nieces and nephews." Adeline Beauregard swept into the Ralston home like a storm dressed in silk and pearls. Her traveling dress cost more than most Willowbrook families earned in a year, and she carried herself with the imperious confidence of wealth and social position. The two men flanking her were clearly lawyers, their briefcases bulging with official documents. "I apologize for the late hour," Adeline said, though her tone suggested no actual remorse. "I traveled as quickly as possible once I learned of this unfortunate situation." Owen stood protectively in front of Lorena, his sheriff instincts alert to potential threats. "What situation would that be, Miss Beauregard? These poor children living in such circumstances. Of course, a teenage girl attempting to mother 4 grieving children, while their father risks his life chasing outlaws. Margaret would be horrified." Adeline's gaze swept dismissively over Lorena before focusing on Owen. "I have come to provide a proper solution. The children will return to St. Louis with me, where they can receive the advantages their breeding deserves: quality education, cultural refinement, social connections." The sound of small feet on the stairs drew their attention. All 4 children had crept down to listen, their faces showing confusion and growing alarm. Sarah clung to the banister, while Tommy positioned himself protectively in front of the twins. "We're not going anywhere," Tommy declared with surprising firmness. "This is our home." Adeline's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Children often resist change, even when it benefits them greatly. That is why adults must make difficult decisions on their behalf. One of the lawyers stepped forward, producing a thick sheaf of papers. "We have prepared preliminary custody documents. Given the children's current living situation, the courts will likely view a transfer favorably." Lorena felt the family she had fought so hard to build crumbling around her. Margaret's wealthy sister possessed every advantage society valued: money, status, bloodline connections. What did an 18-year-old former seamstress have to offer in comparison? Owen's jaw tightened dangerously. These children have a father who loves them and a home where they belong. No court will remove them from their family. "Their family," Adeline repeated with barely concealed disdain. "You mean this child bride you married out of desperation? How long have you even known each other, Sheriff Ralston?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Owen and Lorena's rushed marriage of convenience suddenly seemed fragile when exposed to legal scrutiny. They had no romantic history, no long courtship to demonstrate genuine commitment. "The children are thriving," Lorena said quietly, finding her voice despite the fear threatening to choke her. "Are they?" Adeline's eyebrows arched skeptically. Living in a frontier town, exposed to violence and crude influences, raised by someone barely older than the eldest child? "I think any reasonable judge would question such arrangements." Sarah suddenly broke free from the stairs and ran to Lorena, wrapping her arms around her stepmother's waist. "Don't let her take us away. Please." The desperate plea broke something inside Lorena's chest. These children had become hers in every way that mattered. She had nursed them through illness, protected them from danger, earned their trust and love through patience and sacrifice. No legal document could diminish those bonds, but doubt gnawed at her confidence. What if Adeline was right? What if the children would be better served by wealth and social advantages rather than love and stability? The question tortured her even as she held Sarah protectively. Over the following days, Adeline established herself at Willowbrook's finest hotel and began a calculated campaign to undermine Lorena's position. She visited prominent townspeople, subtly questioning the wisdom of allowing such young, inexperienced hands to guide 4 impressionable children. "I only want what's best for dear Margaret's babies," she confided to Mrs. Patterson over tea. "But surely you can see the irregularity of the current situation. Some townspeople found themselves swayed by Adeline's polished arguments and obvious wealth. The same neighbors who had begun accepting Lorena started questioning her capabilities again. Whispered conversations followed the family wherever they went. But others had witnessed Lorena's devotion firsthand. Mrs. Gibson, whose vegetable cart the children had once overturned, now spoke of their transformation under Lorena's care. Dr. Whitman, despite his own complicated feelings about the family, admitted that Sarah's recovery had been remarkable. The children made their own preferences clear. They refused to speak with Adeline during her visits, clinging to Lorena whenever their aunt appeared. Tommy openly declared his intention to run away if forced to leave Willowbrook. The twins hid whenever they saw Adeline approaching. "They need time to adjust to the idea," Adeline told Owen smoothly. "Children often resist what's best for them initially." Meanwhile, Lorena continued her secret investigation into Margaret's death. Adeline's sudden appearance felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. Margaret's journal had mentioned concerns about family members asking suspicious questions about money and inheritance. Late one evening, while organizing Margaret's remaining belongings, Lorena discovered a hidden compartment in her predecessor's jewelry box. Inside lay several letters bearing Adeline's elegant handwriting. The correspondence revealed a troubling pattern of requests for money, increasingly desperate pleas for financial assistance, and finally veiled threats about family obligations. The most damning letter was dated just 2 weeks before Margaret's first symptoms appeared. In it, Adeline wrote about a special remedy she was sending to help with Margaret's headaches, promising it would solve all her sister's problems permanently. Lorena's hands shook as she read the letter again. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Adeline had not come to rescue the children from an unsuitable guardian. She had come to claim control of their inheritance, the same money she had been stealing from Margaret before resorting to murder. But proving such accusations would require more than suspicious letters. Adeline had covered her tracks carefully, presenting herself as a grieving sister concerned only with her nieces' and nephews' welfare. The next morning brought more troubling news. Adeline had filed formal custody papers with the territorial court. The legal battle Lorena had dreaded was about to begin in earnest. Owen found her in the kitchen, staring at the official summons with despair written across her young face. "We'll fight this," he promised, pulling her into his arms for the first time since their marriage. "The children belong with us." "Do they?" Lorena whispered against his chest. "What if she's right? What if they would be better off with education and opportunities I can't provide?" "Love matters more than money," Owen said firmly. "And they love you. We all do." The admission hung between them, transforming their relationship once again. But even love might not be enough to keep their fragile family together when faced with the full weight of law and social expectations. Outside, Adeline Beauregard smiled as she watched the Ralston house from her hotel window. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, giving Lorena precious little time to prepare her defense. Adeline had hired the most expensive lawyers in the territory, men who specialized in complex inheritance cases and family disputes. Their reputation for ruthless efficiency preceded them throughout Willowbrook. Owen contacted the town's only attorney, a kind but aging man named Samuel Wright, who handled mostly property disputes and simple contracts. The legal mismatch seemed overwhelming before the battle even began. "We need character witnesses," Wright explained during their consultation. "People who can testify to your fitness as parents and the children's well-being under your care?" Lorena felt a spark of hope. The townspeople had witnessed her transformation from dismissed seamstress to devoted mother. Surely some would speak on behalf of the family they had watched grow stronger together. But Adeline was already working to undermine that support. She hosted an elegant tea party at the hotel, inviting Willowbrook's most influential ladies to discuss her concerns about her precious nieces and nephews. "I don't question the young woman's intentions," Adeline said carefully, sipping from delicate china. "But surely you can see that good intentions cannot replace proper breeding and education. These children deserve advantages that frontier life simply cannot provide." Mrs. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. The girl has done better than anyone expected. But children need stability. What happens when the sheriff is killed in the line of duty? She would be left alone with 4 children at barely 19 years old. Exactly my concern, Adeline agreed. In St. Louis, they would have family support, private tutors, connections to the finest universities. Tommy could attend Yale or Harvard. Sarah could make a proper marriage within our social circle. The argument sounded reasonable to women who valued security and social advancement above all else. Several prominent families began questioning their initial support for the Ralston household. Meanwhile, Lorena continued studying the letters she had found in Margaret's jewelry box. The pattern of financial desperation was clear, but she needed proof of the poisoning itself. Late one night, she crept back to the attic and retrieved Margaret's journal, reading it again with new understanding. Margaret had described her symptoms in detail, noting dates and circumstances. Lorena cross-referenced these entries with the letters from Adeline, finding a disturbing correlation. Each time Margaret mentioned receiving medicine from her sister, her symptoms worsened dramatically. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. While cleaning out Margaret's sewing basket, Lorena discovered a small glass vial hidden beneath the lining. Traces of white powder clung to the inside, and the label read, "Mrs. Beauregard's Remedy for Female Complaints." Lorena's grandmother had taught her about poisons, warning her to recognize the signs of deliberate harm. The powder smelled faintly metallic, and tiny crystals remained embedded in the glass stopper. Every instinct screamed that this was the murder weapon. The challenge was proving it without alerting Adeline to her suspicions. One wrong move could destroy the evidence and eliminate any chance of justice for Margaret. 3 days before the custody hearing, Adeline requested a private meeting with Lorena. She arrived at the Ralston house in the afternoon, when Owen was at the sheriff's office and the children were at school. "I thought we might speak frankly, woman to woman," Adeline said, settling into Margaret's favorite chair with calculated familiarity. Lorena served tea with hands that betrayed nothing of her inner turmoil. She had prepared carefully for this encounter, knowing it might be her only chance to gather the proof she needed. "You seem like a sensible girl," Adeline continued. "Surely you understand that fighting this custody battle will only cause pain for everyone involved. The children will be forced to choose sides. Owen's career will suffer from the scandal. And you will be humiliated in court." "The children belong with their father," Lorena replied carefully. Adeline's smile grew colder. "Their father, yes. But do they belong with you? A girl barely older than Tommy, with no education, no family connections, no resources to provide for their future needs?" The words struck at Lorena's deepest insecurities, the fears that plagued her sleepless nights. What did she have to offer these children beyond love and determination? "I have something for you," Adeline said, producing a small wrapped package from her reticule. A special tea blend that helped dear Margaret during her final illness. She found it very soothing for her nerves. Lorena accepted the package with steady hands, though her heart pounded violently. This was it. Adeline was attempting to poison her exactly as she had murdered Margaret, confident that another mysterious death would clear the path to claiming the children. "How thoughtful," Lorena murmured. Margaret was fortunate to have such a caring sister looking after her health. "I tried my best," Adeline replied with false modesty, "though I fear my remedies came too late to save her. Perhaps they will bring you more comfort." The conversation continued for another hour, with Adeline alternating between veiled threats about the custody hearing and gentle suggestions that Lorena should consider what was truly best for the children. Throughout it all, she encouraged Lorena to try the special tea, claiming it would calm her nerves before the difficult court proceedings. After Adeline left, Lorena stared at the package with grim satisfaction. Her grandmother had always said that criminals eventually grew overconfident, making mistakes that revealed their true nature. Adeline's arrogance had just provided the evidence needed to expose her crimes. But using that evidence would require perfect timing and considerable courage. One wrong move would give Adeline the chance to destroy the proof and disappear, taking the children with her. That evening, Owen found Lorena in the kitchen, staring at two identical packages of tea. "What are these?" he asked. "Justice," Lorena replied quietly, "and the proof that Margaret was murdered." She explained everything: the journal entries, the financial desperation revealed in Adeline's letters, and the attempted poisoning that had just occurred. Owen's face grew darker with each revelation, his sheriff's instincts confirming what his heart wanted to deny. "We need to be very careful," Lorena warned. "If Adeline suspects we know the truth, she'll run, and she might take the children by force rather than risk a public trial." The custody hearing was now just 2 days away. Everything would be decided then: the children's future, the family's survival, and whether justice would finally be served for Margaret's murder. Adeline Beauregard had killed once to protect her secrets and secure her financial future. She would not hesitate to kill again if cornered, but she had underestimated the young woman she dismissed as an inexperienced child. Lorena had survived hardships that would have broken weaker people, and she had learned from a grandmother who understood that sometimes the only way to defeat evil was to be more clever than it expected. The final confrontation was coming, and this time Lorena would be ready. The morning of the custody hearing dawned gray and cold, matching the tension that gripped Willowbrook. The entire town seemed to hold its breath as two versions of justice prepared to clash in the territorial courthouse. Lorena dressed carefully in her finest dress, the same one she had worn for her wedding, while Owen polished his sheriff's badge with unusual attention. The children understood the stakes without needing detailed explanations. Tommy had spent the previous evening writing a letter to the judge, his careful penmanship a testament to Lorena's patient teaching. Sarah clutched a drawing she had made of their family, complete with stick figures holding hands around their house. The twins remained unusually quiet, sensing the gravity of the situation. "Whatever happens today," Owen told his family as they prepared to leave, "we face it together." The courthouse overflowed with spectators. News of the custody battle had spread throughout the county, drawing curious onlookers eager to witness the dramatic conclusion. Adeline sat in the front row with her expensive lawyers, radiating confidence in her tailored traveling suit and perfectly arranged hair. Judge Harrison called the court to order with stern authority. He was known for his fairness, but also his strict adherence to legal precedent. Wealthy family members with blood ties typically prevailed in custody disputes, especially when challenging unconventional guardians. Adeline's lead attorney presented their case with polished efficiency. He painted a picture of 4 vulnerable children trapped in primitive frontier conditions, deprived of educational opportunities and cultural refinement. He questioned Owen's judgment in marrying a teenager barely older than his eldest son, suggesting the arrangement was motivated by desperation rather than wisdom. "Miss Beauregard offers these children every advantage," the lawyer concluded: private education, social connections, financial security, and most importantly, the guidance of a blood relative who knew and loved their dear mother. Samuel Wright's response seemed feeble in comparison. The elderly attorney spoke earnestly about family bonds and the children's obvious happiness, but his arguments lacked the sophisticated legal framework of his opponents. Several spectators shook their heads sympathetically, believing the case was already lost. Then Wright called his first witness. Tommy Ralston approached the witness stand with determination that surprised everyone who remembered the angry, defiant boy of just months earlier. His voice shook slightly as he began to read his prepared statement, but his words carried undeniable sincerity. "Before Lorena came to our family, I was failing at everything. I couldn't read properly, and I was ashamed. She taught me without making me feel stupid. She saved Sarah's life when the doctor gave up. She protected us when strangers came asking questions about our mother. She loves us, and we love her. Please don't take us away from the only real mother we have left." Sarah followed with her simple drawing, explaining in her soft voice how Lorena had helped her remember happy memories of Margaret instead of only sad ones. The twins, speaking in turns, described games and stories and the feeling of being safe in their own home. Judge Harrison listened carefully, his expression revealing nothing. Blood ties and legal precedent still favored Adeline's petition, despite the children's obvious preferences. But Lorena had not finished preparing her defense. Wright called Dr. Whitman to testify about Sarah's recovery and the family's general health. Under questioning, the doctor reluctantly admitted that Lorena's nursing skills had been remarkable, and that the children showed no signs of neglect or mistreatment. In fact, he said slowly, the children seem healthier and happier than they have been since their mother's death. Whatever Miss Pierce is doing, it appears to be working. Mrs. Gibson testified about the children's transformation from neighborhood troublemakers to helpful, well-behaved youngsters. Even Mrs. Patterson, despite her earlier doubts, admitted that Lorena had exceeded all expectations in her maternal role. The testimony created doubt about Adeline's claims, but doubt was not enough to overturn legal precedent. Judge Harrison seemed prepared to rule in favor of the blood relative with superior financial resources. Then Lorena stood to address the court directly. Your Honor, I have evidence that Miss Beauregard is not the loving aunt she pretends to be. In fact, I have proof that she murdered Margaret Ralston and is now attempting to murder me to gain access to the children's inheritance. Gasps erupted throughout the courthouse. Adeline's face went pale, but she quickly composed herself. This is desperation, Your Honor. A wild accusation from a girl facing the loss of her comfortable situation. But Lorena was ready. She presented Margaret's journal, reading aloud the entries describing mysterious symptoms that matched arsenic poisoning. She showed the court Adeline's letters revealing financial desperation and requests for money. Most damning of all, she produced the vial of poisoned medicine found in Margaret's belongings. Yesterday, Miss Beauregard gave me an identical package, claiming it would calm my nerves, Lorena explained. She used the exact same method to poison her sister, and she attempted to use it on me when she realized I was investigating Margaret's death. Owen stepped forward with the packages, one containing the arsenic-laced tea from Adeline, the other a harmless substitute Lorena had prepared as evidence. We had both samples tested by the territorial chemist, Owen announced. The results confirmed the presence of arsenic in dangerous concentrations. Adeline's composure finally cracked. You cannot prove I sent anything harmful to Margaret. Those are fabrications designed to discredit me. But her own letters provided the evidence. Cross-referenced with Margaret's journal entries, they created an undeniable timeline of systematic poisoning. The remedies Adeline had sent always preceded Margaret's worst symptoms. Judge Harrison called for a brief recess to examine the evidence privately. When court resumed, his expression was grim. Based on the evidence presented, I am ordering Miss Beauregard's immediate arrest for the murder of Margaret Ralston and the attempted murder of Lorena Ralston. The custody petition is denied. The children will remain with their father and stepmother, where they clearly belong. The courtroom erupted in chaos as deputies moved to arrest Adeline. She struggled briefly, her elegant mask finally slipping to reveal the desperate killer underneath. Those children are mine by right, she screamed as they led her away. Margaret owed me that money. I deserved it. Her confession removed any lingering doubt about her guilt. In the aftermath, the Ralston family found themselves surrounded by well-wishers who had witnessed their courage and determination. The same townspeople who had once questioned Lorena's fitness as a mother now celebrated her intelligence and bravery. That evening, as they sat together in their parlor, Owen took Lorena's hand in his. I have a question that needs asking properly this time, he said, dropping to one knee despite their existing marriage. Lorena Pierce Ralston, will you marry me? Not for convenience, not for necessity, but for love? Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. For love. The children cheered and piled onto their parents, creating a tangle of arms and laughter and pure joy. Tommy had learned to read. Sarah had found her voice. The twins had discovered the security of unconditional love, and Lorena had proven that strength came not from wealth or social position, but from courage, intelligence, and the determination to protect those who mattered most. 6 months later, Willowbrook celebrated the Ralston family at the annual Harvest Festival. Lorena, now 19 and visibly pregnant with her first biological child, watched her stepchildren perform in the school pageant Tommy had helped organize. The town that had once dismissed her now looked to her for advice on everything from child rearing to herbal remedies. Justice had been served, love had triumphed, and a young seamstress had become the heart of a family that would stand together against whatever challenges the future might bring.